Welcome to another safety video. My name is Mr. Palmer. I teach at San Marcos High School, construction. Okay, so the tool is called the track saw, which has three parts. The saw, the track, and the vacuum. You need all these three to make it work. The goal and the use of the track saw is to make a long, straight cut or a long, beveled cut that is also straight. So the saw is going to sit on the track. We're going to put the track where we need to on our material, and we're going to get a nice, straight cut. So now, the important parts of our saw are, right here is our safety. I cannot press the tool or turn the tool on unless the safety is up. So once the safety's up, it does two things. If you look right here, the safety actually allows you not only to press the trigger, but it allows you to actually plunge the saw, because when I slide this up, it slides that piece of metal right into that groove, which allows the saw to plunge down. So very important. So that's the safety. This is the power. Right here, second, probably more important than the actual safety, is this right here. So right here is our depth adjustment, and it has a depth indexer to determine how far your saw is going to be cut down. Right here, this is our angle adjustment knob, and there's actually two. There's one on the front of the saw and one on the back of the saw. Before you change the bevel of your saw, you actually have to loosen both of these. So as we said, the purpose of the tool is to make a beveled cut. This is how you're going to make a beveled cut. Okay? Right here is your power cord. Power cord actually comes off, so you just align it and then turn it to the right. Right here is the RPM adjustment. Keep it at 6. You shouldn't need to adjust that. Here is the actual track for the guide bar, which we'll go over that. And then your dust port. Right here is our track. Okay? This part right here is where our clamps go. So this is our clamps for the track, which slide right in here. We'll go over that later. Right here is we're going to call this the clear rubber. And this is actually where the saw blade is going to come down, and we use that clear rubber to actually align our track to the exact position that we want to make our cut. So here's how we're going to set it up. You're going to take your saw out of the box. Please don't drop it, because it does not function well if it's dropped. The plug does not actually go into the wall outlet. The plug actually goes into the front of our vacuum. Now we're going to plug in the vacuum, because now we're going to turn the power on our vacuum, maybe. So now when I turn my tool on, the vacuum automatically goes on and then automatically shuts off. It's a beautiful thing. So it sucks up all of the material, or rather all of the dust from your cut. But for it to actually work, we're going to take out the vacuum hose out of this nice little compartment here. And we're going to take the end of the hose and attach it to our saw. So that's taking it out of the box and getting it ready for your cut. I have two young men that are actually going to show us how to make a cut using our vacuum track saw to make a cut on our sheet of plywood here. So we have a sheet of plywood. They need to cut it in half for a shelf. They're going to perform the steps as I walk them through these cuts. So this is Isaac.
Hello.
Isaac is a stellar builder, student, and person. So he's going to show us, I'm going to walk him through making a cut today. So what we want to do is cut this piece of plywood in half using our track saw. So the first thing you have to do is we have to set up our track. So this piece of plywood is 96.5 inches long. So he's going to make a mark at 48 1/4 of an inch. Measuring from either end, it doesn't matter. Now, you'll notice he's actually going to directly in the middle of the piece. We have to make 2 marks. And when you make your marks, you actually want to go closest to the edges of the piece so that if we put it right in the middle, it changes the angle of our saw really quickly. So he wants to make it on the furthest, closest to the edge at 48 1/4. When you're making a measurement, make sure that your tape isn't going at an angle. It should go parallel to the edge of the board. And now he's going to get his track, and he's going to line up the clear rubber directly through, which is why you want to make a crow's foot right through that. When he's lining it up, you want to make sure that you center the track. So he has a shorter piece here. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want to center it going so that there's an equal amount extending over each side of your table. Here's a really important part. The saw blade is going to come down and we're going to create what's called a saw curve. So the saw is going to remove, let's say the saw blade was 1 inch wide. It would be removing this amount of material. So you're going to set your track, this part of your track, on the side of the material that you actually want as your piece. This is called our scrap piece. He measured from this end, so he wants this piece, so he sets his track on the piece that he wants. If he set it this direction, he would actually be removing material from the piece that he wants. And now we need to clamp it. Now we have 2 different types of clamps that you can use. One is it simply slides together and you turn it. That's the easier one. This one students have a lot of trouble with. So the first thing you're going to do, releases it, so it allows it to move, but primarily to release the tension. What you're going to do is you'll lock it down. Once it's pressed, you're going to hold that, and then to make it tighter, you squeeze it this way. So now that clamp is tight. To release the tension, you squeeze this together, and now it will come down. So he's going to take the clamps now and slide one on each end of the track, making sure that his clear rubber is still going through his crow's foot. If it's not, you have to adjust and then tighten your clamp back down. So now we should have this line. These 2 lines should be parallel to make your cut, unless you wanted to cut at an angle. Okay, so we've set up the track. The next part is we need to set up the saw. So when you're making a cut, the blade actually has to go all the way through your material, which means you're actually going to cut into the table below. So make sure you're making this cut into table that is allowed to be cut on. So for example, these tables aren't, but this table is allowed to be cut on. So it should go about a 1/16, which we're going to go over into this table, but it should not go all the way through the piece and specifically into a piece of metal. So this, if someone cut all the way through this piece, so it's actually a little bit less stable. And if you didn't have these metal bars, it would have just collapsed and caused for a dangerous cut. So we're going to go over that and how to prevent that. Okay, one of the most important parts of the track saw is setting the adjustment stop right here, the depth adjustment. So this block stops this and prevents the blade from going further. If you have it too deep, it's going to cut into our table too far. It's designed to go this far here. So to do that, if I was going to cut this piece, I don't even need to measure the thickness of this piece. What I'm going to do is just set my track directly on the piece. Before you set the depth adjustment, a quick way to make sure you're safe is just to take the cord here, grab it and turn it to the left, and take this plug out. So now you don't have power to it, and now you can walk through setting your depth. And then I'm going to set my saw on my track. And now what I'm going to do is, without pressing the trigger, I'm going to slide my safety up. And I'm going to bring my saw down to touch the table that I'm going to cut over. So I know I'm cutting through this material. And now what I'm going to do is squeeze my depth adjustment. And I'm going to bring that stop up to the metal bar that's right here. So what I did is I brought this down to where my blade touched, and I slid this up to it, and now it stops at that depth. Let me do that again. So I'm going to bring this down without pressing the trigger. The blade is now touching the table that I'm cutting on. I'm going to slide this up. And now, when I make my plunge, it stops right at my table. So now you have one of the most important parts, which is the depth, so that you're just cutting in a 1/16 into your table like this cut was made here. Show them the bottom of the saw. Remember, this groove here is actually going to sit over this groove here. So you need to slide it all the way forward. Good. But before he starts, he's going to get safety glasses on. I prefer to put earphones on so that you can hear for the rest of your life. And then make sure any loose jewelry is gone and your sleeves are up. Now, we're going to make our cut. Before we make the cut, we need to make sure that our hoses and our cord are on this side so they don't get caught on the saw. The other thing is we don't want to plunge, meaning we don't want to start our cut here and plunge into the material. What we want to do is bring the saw off of the track and start the tool out here and then make our cut. So the difference is, if I cut right when I press down, this blade is going to touch the material. I want it to go all the way down, then start my cut. So Isaac is going to do that. Power first, and then you're going to plunge. So don't plunge and then start the tool, because if you start the tool with the blade touching that material, it's going to kick back at you. Okay? So he's going to start here, and you want to keep this left hand on the handle and your right hand here. And then you're going to start the tool up here, plunge down, and then you're slowly going to make the cut forward. Okay, so he reached a point where he can't go further across his cut because of his reach. You'll notice that the hose it's very common for the hose or the cord to get caught on the end of your track, and then your saw can't go forward. So if you ever feel the saw getting caught or it can't move forward, you're most likely either these are caught somewhere or you're stepping on them, which don't step on the hose. So look back, but you don't ever want to bring the saw up because it can actually come off the track and start cutting the track. So now he's got to position himself on the other side, which is going to be a little bit harder of a cut. So this is where you don't want to cut more new material. He's going to start the blade where it has already cut. So he's going to pull the safety up, start the saw. Now, if you can avoid this type of cut, that would be preferable because it's a little bit of you don't have a real strong grip. But due to this, if you can reach all the way over, I would prefer that. If you can make a stretch to get across your piece. It's going to be a safer cut than pulling back towards you, but what he did is not incorrect. And then before you bring it up, I would try to let the blade stop and then pull it up. After you're done, it's really easy to just set this on the side, and then someone comes and catches your cord or your hose and pulls this expensive tool off and it's damaged. So please, when you're done, put it back either on the box, in the box, or on your vacuum so that it does not get knocked off. So now what he's going to do is release the so this is our strap piece, which we removed material off of here. He's going to release the clamps, slide the clamps out, and now he has a piece. This cut is parallel to that. It's straight, and he's set to go put it on the shelf. Care for the track is also really important. You don't want this rubber to peel off because this rubber marks your cut, and if it gets peeled off, bumped, hit on the side, then it doesn't make your marker accurate any longer. Okay, so there's things that you should never do. Just a real quick recap when using the tool. The first one is you should never make your cut unless you verified the depth, as we went over earlier. So unplug your tool, make sure that the depth adjustment is just set enough to where the teeth of your blade are touching the bottom part of your table. And then as you're cutting, if you feel like the saw you can't move it forward, make sure you don't just keep forcing it, because most likely your cords are caught. Okay? So just keep it slow and steady. If you feel like it's getting caught, just look back and see if it is getting caught, whether by the hose or the cord. Important things to remember is that your saw is sitting flat on the track. So unless you get this guide fit perfectly in the bottom of your saw, so you don't want it like this, because then it can move right to left. So what this is ensuring is that the saw can't twist right or left, move side to side, and that it can only go forward. So make sure that it's sitting flat on your track and that you're keeping downward pressure. And another important thing to remember is that if you stop to cut right here, you want to make sure if you start the cut again that you slightly bring the saw back so that when you plunge down, your blade is not cutting new material, but it's going directly into the cut that you've already made. So once you've plunged down into your cut that you've already made, then you can slowly start moving forward. That's all we got. Have fun.